Before the video gets going, I want to say a warning and put the following videos and pictures into context. The warning is threefold. 1. This video is not one of our goofy, funny compilations. 2. The footage is at times graphic. And 3. This video is not going to provide all the information about the Khmer Rouge, nor does it begin to explain the atrocities that happened. In April 1975, the Khmer Rouge overtook the vulnerable Cambodian government. Their plan was to return the country to a heightened time of success. They called this Year Zero. The Khmer Rouge forced everyone into labor cooperatives working on rice fields. By everyone, I mean every person, young, old, disabled, pregnant, it didn't matter. They forced them into intensive labor for 12 to 15-hour days with little food. Thousands of people died from exhaustion, starvation, and disease. To enforce loyalty, they severed victims' connections to their families. Children were taken from mothers, and wives from husbands, and so on. Obedience was imperative, and the Khmer Rouge were swift to enforce their leadership. If persons were considered to be traitors or plotting to revolt, they could simply be killed on spot. The regime was quick to take out anyone who presented intelligence, such as doctors, students, and even those who just wore glasses. Their fear of uprising led to much sadder fates for thousands of Cambodians who found themselves at S21, the torture headquarters of the Khmer Rouge, which is where we're standing. As you walk into the compound, you can feel almost peaceful and touristy. It's really weird. You see the tour guide sitting to the side waiting for customers to come up, and it's just got an odd vibe knowing what you're about to go see. And S21 was stationed in a high school in Phnom Penh. It's a dilapidated and intimidating building once you're standing outside. The compound is separated into 3 different buildings. The first one takes you into large rooms that were used for torture. In each room you'll find a few items such as a bed and an apparatus that goes around the ankles of victims to restrain them to the bed or nearby. And most rooms have ammo containers that were used for defecation in that time. The items that you're seeing are the items that they found. They aren't replicas or anything like that. Also, they show you a photo of the victims in the rooms. It's eerie because the pictures match perfectly. Nothing has been changed. Walking into these rooms is very heavy. You can almost feel the weight of the room, and I know that that's really cliche to say, but I've never been in a room where I know thousands of people have been murdered, and it's really intense. Methods of torture at S21 included ripping out the fingernails and toenails of victims, waterboarding, lashes with electrified wire, and many other things. One of the striking things that we saw was on a list of unspoken rules. Victims were not allowed or told not to cry while they were being tortured. It's just shocking to think that they were controlling the uncontrollable. It's really sad. In the second building, you see the regime's intense documentation of their destruction. They took mugshots of every single person that came into S21, and room after room that you walk through, there are unduplicated pictures of victims who were brought here, and it's intense. You can see the anger in some of their faces, and you can see that some have just completely given up, and you know that that's just the beginning. The stunning part of this section is that the pictures aren't from centuries ago. It's hard to swallow that 17,000 people were killed here only 30 years ago. The third and final building of the Genocide Museum showed the confinement and torture devices. On the first floor, there were small brick cells. They were about the size of bathroom stalls. The cells seemed hastily made, and it was almost as if overnight they had decided they were going to imprison and torture people to death. As you walk to the second floor, you can notice that there's barbed wire that's been strung along the open balcony, and we found out that this was so that inmates could not commit suicide from jumping off the building. And it just seems terrible that they can't decide their own death. They are unable to decide that. That's been taken away from them. And seeing this showed that this place hasn't been altered at all since the regime was forced out. That barbed wire is the same barbed wire that was sitting there then. On this floor, the cells are made of wood. They are tiny, and there's a hole to look in so that they could check on prisoners. It felt weird looking through the holes, like you could almost feel someone on the other side. And you didn't want to look for very long because they might pop up. And to get into this area, you had to walk through one of the cells. And it was a disgusting feeling like I haven't had since I was afraid of the dark. It made me want to run as quick through it as I could so that nothing bad would happen. The last exhibit showed the torture equipment. Seeing the equipment and the explanations still allows you to be detached, but there's also several paintings to illustrate the procedures. They showed waterboarding equipment, which is where the victim lays down on a declining platform and water is run over their heads and breathing is decreased. Another device hung victims upside down in a barrel with their arms behind their backs while they were repeatedly dipped into dirty water. The regime also used the pull-up bars outside of the high school to hang victims by their feet until they passed out. They would then force their heads into dirty water to shock them back into consciousness. They'd repeat this several times. Alright, so we have just finished the second building, and I can tell you that I can feel, like, I don't really know how to express it other than that my arms just ache a little bit. And I don't know what that really means or whatever. But as we were finishing the second building, we overheard a conversation with some 3 wealthy-looking women and 1 really ugly man. And Eric thought that he had heard something that the woman said and told me about it, so I started listening to their conversation, and the ugly-looking man said that they shouldn't have stuff like this here in regards to the Khmer Rouge in this museum, which, in all honesty, I think that it should be here, because this is what it was, and it consumed the entire country. And they were talking about just having a memorial. When something consumes an entire country, the memorial's going to be kind of big, and it's kind of going to look like this. It's going to look like where you can pinpoint the most horror, and that's here. And he also said that it looks like these people are proud of what happened, and that's probably the most offensive thing I've ever heard in my life. I wish that some Cambodians had been there to say something about it, or to just do something, because I really wanted to say something, but I don't think it's my place. And there's no reason to start an uproar at a museum, but I really wanted to punch those people in the face because they're absolutely rude. Completely offensive.